Welcome to the Advance Your Art podcast, where we talk about the journey from artist to entrepreneur and everything in between. You've worked hard to hone your craft. Now take it to the next level with tips, techniques, strategies, and routines used by successful artists to grow their businesses and careers. Now, let's get started and have some fun with your host, Yuri Cataldo.
Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Perfect. Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I'd like to first start off by asking you to describe yourself and what it is that you do.
I have a pretty weird set of skills in that I am an economist who, aside from that dimension, is also an entrepreneur. He's also an investor who specializes in exotic assets like domain names and occasionally cryptocurrencies. And I take these really weird and different skills and combine them into the kind of perspective that I think you cannot find anywhere. And I share that perspective with people through the videos I publish on my 1 Minute Economics YouTube channel, through the books I write, through the blogging I do and have been doing for the past 8 years or so. So that's pretty much it. All of the personality tests I take label me as the teacher kind. So I guess it makes sense.
Sure. So at your heart, you're a teacher, and you just choose different areas to do that. I can see that.
I get my fulfillment from that. So I do get a great sense of accomplishment from any situation, video, audio, text, of course, in which I can share experiences, thoughts, and so on with others. So I would label me as a teacher for sure.
Okay, that's great. So there is definitely a mixed bag that we're going to be talking about today. Then I'm curious. Is there an important thing that you learned growing up from a parent or a teacher or a mentor that had an impact on what it is that you're doing right now?
I would say that the biggest influence in my life and the person who taught me to be kind of like a well-rounded, balanced individual was my great-grandfather. And basically, this is the kind of thing I like to put on the table, and I tell people a lot of times that you're not going to come to me to find earth-shattering advice in each sentence that I finish. You know, the value I give to people, the value of my perspective, I think comes precisely from the fact that in everything I do, I give it a well-rounded approach. I give it a coherent approach. And I like to think of it as basically giving people a dose of common sense that not many people provide these days.
That's great. I always love to joke that common sense sometimes is a taught trade. So
yeah,
having a good dose of common sense is wonderful. Okay, so let's start from the beginning then. Could you walk me through the journey of, your first, so obviously you're an economist, so you went to school for that. So when your early days as an economist, through your first few jobs, and what led you to why you decided to blog?
Well, the strange thing is, actually everything about me is strange, starting from the fact that I only once had a job, and it was more of a freelance job than anything. And I actually quit college, and you couldn't even say I quit college because I never went there. I got accepted, but then I just didn't go because I thought, okay, it's time to start businesses. My family was not doing great financially. My mother got sick. It kind of sucked. So I said, okay, I'm going to let this college thing slide and just focus on running businesses, focusing on doing my own thing, being my own person, and so on. And I did that. So that's the strange thing, and that's what got me to basically combine economics with everything I do, is the fact that I didn't start on a well-defined path right from the beginning. I chose this path, and I started college again when I was already doing well financially. Now, realistically speaking, financially speaking, opportunity speaking, and so on, I had no practical reason to start college again. But I did it because I loved economics. I said, look, I want to learn more about this stuff. I want to teach others. I do want to make economics a part of my life. And I think it does say a lot, because when you choose to go back to college to study economics, and I went from dropping out of college to getting my bachelor's, getting my master's, going after the PhD, and doing the whole shebang, so to speak. And when you go through all of this and choose to do it at a moment when you're comfortable enough, you would have been comfortable enough to just continue along the path you were on, then it means you're really passionate about it. And this is the kind of relationship I have with economics.
Mm-hmm. With your background and the fact that you've done so many different things, what was it that attracted your attention for each of those? So with domain names and with cryptocurrencies, is there something that you found that's related between those that piqued your interest, or what was it about getting involved in each of those that made you want to pursue that?
Well, at the very beginning, I did this entire internet thing. I always knew I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I kind of always assumed that I'd probably never do the regular 9-to-5 gig, so to speak. So I believe that what attracted me the most to this kind of life was the freedom it gives you. The freedom to do your own thing, the freedom to set your own hours, the freedom to make your own mistakes, of course, and so on. For me, that was the main selling point. And it was never, and it still isn't about the money. I mean, the choices I make right now, writing books, publishing videos on YouTube, and so on, these are not the kind of choices that someone who's after money makes. Let's just say there are better ways in this world to make money than being a teacher, so to speak. And what I value most about the internet in general is the freedom. What I value most about my life is the freedom, because if you were to, film a reality show around me and so on, you would notice that I don't really place emphasis on stuff, I'm always the guy who drives a far cheaper car than one he can afford. I'm always the guy who likes being frugal, even if it would be possible for him not to, because that's the value in what I do. That's the value in what those who earn a living online do. The fact that you can basically, you can just take charge of your destiny. You can do what you want, when you want it, and for the reasons that you want to do it. That, for me, is the main selling point of the internet by far, and the reason why I'm going to be eternally grateful for being able to do something that generations before me I would say they would have never dreamt of it.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into then, I believe it's what you started first. Was it your blog?
Oh, no, actually, no. I started doing something straightforward. I started offering services as a freelance writer. I started by writing articles in English. That was the first thing I've done.
Okay.
And after that, I moved to what I think was, a natural progression. I started my own business offering services. And obviously, the first services I started with were, once again, articles in English. But this time, I wasn't writing them myself. I was working with other people and acting not so much as a writer, but as an entrepreneur, editor, and so on. Mm-hmm. Then we progressed to other services, and I started having, friendship-like and even genuine friendships with some of my customers. And this brings us to an episode when I was chatting with one of them on Skype, a customer who ended up becoming my best man at my wedding. Mm-hmm. So we were chatting on Skype, and he was telling me, this was I think 9 years ago, he was telling me he's a professional domain investor. And you would expect me to raise an eyebrow, because you don't hear this occupation. You don't hear about this occupation very frequently.
Right.
But I didn't raise an eyebrow because to someone who was pretty connected to the internet in general, it made sense. Domains are an integral part of the internet, so it made sense to me that the very best domains should be worth a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So we talked about domains. He told me a thing or two about what he did, and I started investing in some as well. And fortunately, it turned out I was pretty good at it because by far the biggest moneymaker for me has been the domain industry and everything surrounding it. So we were talking one of these days, and he was telling me about his blog. A blog that he started. It wasn't a good domain. He wrote some good content, but he didn't have time for it. And I have no idea what I paid him for the blog in question, but it was pocket change. Realistically speaking, he didn't ask me for a lot of money. He just saw that I enjoyed the idea of taking over, so I did. And this was 8 or 9 years ago, and to this day, I'm still doing it. I'm still, for the past a few months, I've been blogging each day, and even if I don't blog each day, I do try to blog at least 2-3 times a week and so on. Okay. So even now, 8-9 years later, running a blog and sharing my thoughts that way is I would say it's an important part of my life.
I'd like to backtrack just a moment to talk about your domain investing again, because that sounds really interesting. So what is it that makes a domain more valuable than like one versus the other? Or is it a process where you would just buy domain names and then try to sell them off? Could you just go in a little more detail about what domain investing involves and what it's about?
Yeah, actually, the fundamental thing about the very best domains is that they sell themselves. So if you take a look at the business model of the biggest portfolio holders in the world, you will never find them actively looking for people to buy domains. Instead, they just accumulated vast portfolios of really the best of the best in terms of domains, and they're waiting for people to contact them. It's kind of like a virtuous circle, if you will. Mm-hmm. You have the best possible domains. Obviously, they're good enough so that people contact you themselves by searching the whois details of the domain name or contacting you otherwise. And of course, when they are contacting you first, you're in a strong position to negotiate because it's them who want something that you have. It's not like if I contact you, it's because I want you to buy something from me. You're the one who's contacting me. Therefore, I'm the one who's negotiating from a position of strength. This results in obviously even more money. That permits them to buy even better domains, which put them in an even better position to receive offers. And that basically describes, I would say, the careers of the very best domain investors.
Okay. What makes a domain valuable? Like if you were just looking at like a couple of domains, let's say they're not like an obvious thing, like you didn't own McDonald's.com before it happened. But like nowadays, is it?
First of all, it's important to say that domains like McDonald's or they're only valuable because they have been turned into into a brand by something. Right. Okay, they do have some inherent value, like McDonald's being shorter than please buy our cheap burgers.info. But other than that, most of the big brand domains that we know and that don't actually mean something, the main value lies in what has been done with them, not necessarily the fact that the domain itself is amazing.
Okay. So looking apart from that, do you still buy domains? And if you do, what is it that you look for that may give you an edge on the domain that you're trying to buy? Well,
my fundamental compass is the fact that I try to only buy the best of the best. I'm not sure if you know this, but as of 2014, if memory serves me well, a lot of new domain extensions have appeared. Mm-hmm. So up until that point, you only had .com, .net, .org, .tv, .info, and just a handful of extensions, basically. Mm-hmm. Today, you have about 1,000 or so. You have anything. You have, believe me or not, you guys, our listeners, can search for that online as well. If you want to buy domain name .horse, you're going to be able to do that because there is an actual .horse extension. I kid you not.
Wow.
And furthermore, if you want to buy legal domains, if you're a lawyer, you can buy